Calgary Police Service is aware of 3 unrelated controversial protests planned in the downtown this weekend. It has come to our attention that these protests are causing concern for some members of our Calgary's diverse communities, so we want to take a moment to address those concerns. First off, on Friday evening, there's going to be a gathering downtown to mark Quds Day. On Saturday and Sunday, we expect 2 opposing groups to have additional demonstrations downtown. While there is always risk with protests that people will attend who have different agendas than the organizers, at this point we have no intelligence, no information that suggests there will be any violence or any criminal activity at these events. Through our Diversity Resource Unit and our Criminal Intelligence Unit, we have been working closely with the organizers of all 3 events. They have been cooperating with us, and they show a desire to keep these protests legal and peaceful, which is exactly what we'd expect in this community. The organizers of these events have also recently held several protests in Calgary without incident, and we have no reason to believe that this weekend will be any different. They will, we expect that they will continue to express their views in a peaceful and legal manner. As is our standard practice in the Calgary Police Service, our major event management unit has done an assessment of all of the events and determined what resources are needed on site to protect public safety during these events and any counter protests that may occur. We are confident that we have the right resources dedicated to these events to be ready to respond to anything that happens and anyone at the events who becomes violent or decides to break the law. However, we are not, as I said, we are not anticipating any threats to public safety as a result of these events. I'll just say this, that all Calgarians should feel safe to visit the downtown this weekend. We are confident that we have the right plans in place for these events to ensure that everyone can express their views peacefully while allowing others to enjoy our city's core at the same time. I'll take any questions you have.
What are the groups that are potentially controversial that will be doing this weekend?
Well, I'm not, I'm not going to name the groups. I'll tell you this: here's what's happening is it's very, very fluid. What we're hearing, and a lot of it is based on social media. So we have one group that's going to show up on one day, another group's going to show up a different day. They're changing dates. So I'm not going to get into the specifics. I would say that for us, any groups that are showing up and they have opposing views, there's always a potential that somebody in that group may take offense, or there's always a potential that there's an issue. So we're always prepared for that.
But just to be clear on the timeline, so there's one planned for tomorrow, which is on Quds Day, and then there's one on Saturday and on Sunday?
That's correct, yes.
And perhaps for members of the public who might not be familiar with exactly how the fine line between what is actually hate speech and what is just maybe a controversial opinion, can you maybe give an example of where police would actually interject into one of these rallies, that if it was not specifically violence? Obviously if there's violence you're going to interject,
right. But
can you give an example of what is a particular kind of speech that actually would warrant either a police interaction or even a charge? Can you just kind of clarify what that actually is? Because there's a fine line.
There is a fine line. In fact, what I'd say is that there's many groups out there, and people say extremely offensive and to me even very offensive things, but it's not necessarily a crime. And that is one of the great things about this country, is that we have the fundamental freedom of speech, and so one of our jobs is to make sure that we protect that right. However, there is a fine line for sure. And criminal hate speech, there are some things that have to be in place for that charge, and certainly we're looking at it has to be targeted towards an identifiable group. It has to be made in public, and it's likely to lead to harm against individuals. So these are investigations, and really, we do have plans in place as far as when we would intervene. That might be after the fact, when it's safe to do so. It might be after our hate crimes coordinators had a chance to review video or review the information. I can tell you right now that the messages that have been publicly expressed by the organizers of these groups from the weekend have been reviewed by our hate crimes coordinator, and there's nothing that meets the threshold for a criminal offense as it stands right now.
Can you maybe talk a little bit, Cliff, about the what kind of, at least in uniform, what kind of manpower and how many officers we'll see at each of these demonstrations?
Yeah, I won't get into specifics because that just wouldn't be prudent, but I would say this, that certainly any plan that we have is scalable up or down depending on the crowds and what happens. We will have members in uniform at these events. Some will be on bikes, some will be in uniform. We may even have some plainclothes members there as well. So, it's important that we know that there's always a potential, again, that somebody that's not part of one of these groups gets involved and tries to antagonize things, and so we want to be prepared. So we will have I think, a very good presence based on our experience dealing with these types of incidents in the past.
How common are these demonstrations for Calgary with such extreme views and sometimes opposing views coming head to head?
Well, I would say opposing views probably fairly frequently. I think extreme views, I don't have numbers. I think what we find is that protests and rallies really ramp up over the summer, and so here we are at the beginning of the summer, and this is one of the ones that we're going to see that that has caused, really the purpose here is this has caused angst amongst our Muslim community, and really I want to assure them that we will have a presence there, and they will be safe.
These ramped up as kind of just the politics in the U.S. have ramped up, or is this just a typical kickoff to the summer protest season?
I think there has been some media reports that are on social media, and that has caused some people to be concerned about what was said. I think that's probably part of it. But I'm not sure how much the U.S. or anything in politics plays into this, but it's possible. I don't know.
From a policing standpoint, how challenging is it to not only keep the peace in something like this, but to enforce the law?
I think keeping the peace and enforcing the law isn't difficult for us. That's what we do every day. That's what our members out there go to work and do every single day. I think the challenge, quite frankly, is that when you have people that are saying some really distasteful things, it's what we would deem to be wrong, and yet it's not criminal. I think sometimes that can be a challenge. Remember that Calgary police officers live and work in this community as well. So it's not something that we like to hear. We don't like to see and hear distasteful things, but again, people have the right, freedom of speech, and that's our job to make sure that we're allowing people under the Canadian Charter rights and freedoms to have their views.
Will the responses at these protests be similar to the ones that we saw a few weeks ago at the rally downtown?
I wasn't at the rally downtown, so I'm not sure what the response was. Sorry. I'm not sure.
In terms of a more specific location, do you know if any of these groups have been granted a permit to rally at either City Hall or Olympic Plaza?
Yeah, you'd have to check with the city for that. My understanding is no, but that's not going to be a police function, so check with the city.